My middle name is Lane, and so I go by my first and middle name, and my mom's name is also Lane, and it's just like a family name that's been passed down for a few generations, and out of my sister and I was the one that ended up getting Lane in my name, so that rhymed. And one day my mom and I were talking in the kitchen, and I forget what we were talking about, but she mentioned, like, hey, like, Brittin Lane, that's actually a good stage name. And I was like, oh, you're right. And it was funny because at the time I had no interest in pursuing music as like a career. And then a few years later I did, and I was like, I'm just gonna use my name, my real name, as my like stage name. I hate pickles. That's probably the most random fact on this entire list, but I do. I hate pickles. They're disgusting, they smell gross. I have no desire to, like, they look gross. I don't like them at all. And I don't understand the obsession that some people have with pickles. It's just, it doesn't make sense to me. I cannot read sheet music at all. If I was in a situation where somebody was pointing a gun to my head and they had a piece of sheet music in front of me and they were like, read this or you'll die, I would die instantly. So I can't read sheet music, but I can only play by ear. So like with piano, if you guys have ever seen me on my like Instagram live streams that I do occasionally, sometimes I'll do them and I'll just like sit down at the piano and just play a bunch of random songs and have people like request stuff, and then I'll play it on the spot. And the reason that I can do that is because I can only play by ear, meaning like I can hear a piece of music and then I know exactly which notes are being played, and I can just sit down and like figure it out within a few minutes. This is my dog. Her name is Sophie. She's a brat, but I love her. And she likes to steal food off of tables. So if you ever come over to my house and you leave a piece of food on the coffee table, she will jump up and get it as soon as you're not looking. I really want to get a tattoo on the side of my hand, and this is not an ad or a sponsor, but like, if they want to sponsor me, go for it. I would love to do that. But I recently got a temporary tattoo from Inkbox, and I put it on the side of my hand right here, and I just wanted to see how it would look, because I've thought about getting a tattoo before, and I just was never really sure about the placement, and so that was just kind of an easy way to play around with it without actually committing. That was just an easy way to play around with it without actually having to commit to anything. That's what I was trying to say. So after playing around with placement a whole lot, I've decided that I really want a tattoo on the side of my hand right here. And I just want like one or two words, and I want them to be written in cursive. And I just think that it would look really elegant and classy. And the reason that I haven't gotten one so far is just because I haven't found one that has a lot of meaning to me. And I know that tattoos don't necessarily have to mean anything to you, but for me personally, I want it to mean something special to me every time I look at it. And so I'm figuring out what I want to get tattooed on there, but I definitely want something on the side of my hand. I am terrified of needles, which is great considering I want to get a tattoo. It's weird because as a kid, I had no problem with needles. Like, I could go get blood drawn or go get blood tests done or get shots. And from what I remember, I did fine with them. Like, no problems. I could look at them put the needle in and be fine and, like, not care at all. And then last year, I went to go get blood drawn, and for some reason, I don't know what it was, but something about looking at it made me just pass out instantly, and I think I was also dehydrated. I have a traumatic brain injury, and if you didn't know that, I actually made 2 whole videos about it that you can go watch, and I will link those down in the description. And I got it from a skateboarding accident. Because of my injury, it's made things like going out into public places or crowded places or loud places or really just anything where there's a lot going on very difficult for me, because it's a lot for my brain to try and take in all at once, and it tends to make me dizzy and give me headaches and that sort of thing. So things like grocery shopping, going to the movies, going to the mall, anything like that just is an absolute nightmare for me right now. And also, because of said injury, performing is especially difficult because things like the loud sounds and the large amounts of people and then like bright lights, again, all of that is just horrible for my brain right now. So I typically prefer to just perform in my room in front of a camera and have my camera be my audience just because then it's much more doable. Ah! I just spilled my tea. Anyways, on to the next random fact. As a kid, I was absolutely obsessed with horses, and I wanted to actually be I wanted to be a professional barrel racer. And if you don't know what that is, you should look at videos of it because it's actually kind of fun to watch. But I wanted to do that. That's like the thing that I wanted to be when I grew up. And it's so funny because now the career that I'm pursuing is so different from that and so different from anything that I thought I would be pursuing when I was little. I ended up working at a stable, and I sort of traded out the work for riding lessons and for barrel racing lessons. And those are some of my best memories, is just working at a stable and getting to work with horses. And I worked with kids. It was really cool because I actually got to work with disabled kids who were using riding as a sort of therapy, as a sort of like physical therapy. And so I would like work with the horses and I would work with the kids and I would lead them around the arena and do these different things and lead them on like trail rides and that sort of stuff. So it was really cool, and I met some really amazing kids and I got to work with some really awesome horses. So that was kind of a dream come true in itself. We were never able to own horses just because they're so expensive, and we lived in the suburbs, which is not an ideal place to own a horse, obviously. But after over a decade of begging and begging my parents, they surprised me one Christmas by letting me lease a horse, which, if you don't know what that is, it's kind of like you pay a certain amount of money each month and you sign a contract, and it's almost like you own half of a horse, which is a really weird way to think about it. But basically, like, I would get to drive to the barn and use my own equipment and just ride whenever I wanted to and take care of like my horse whenever I wanted to. And so it was kind of like owning a horse, but without all of the financial responsibility. The first horse that I ever leased was named Twister, and unfortunately it didn't work out very long because he had to be relocated and he had to go into training because he was a greenbroke horse, is what they call it. So after Twister, I ended up leasing another horse named Tinkerbell, and she was an awesome horse. I got to work with her and help train her on barrel racing and just running barrels and stuff, and so that was a lot of fun, and that was a really, really cool experience. And unfortunately, after a little while, that also didn't work out because she also had to be relocated, and so it lasted for a little while, and it was really great while it did, but eventually she did have to move, and so I had to stop leasing her. I haven't ridden in a few years, and I miss it a lot, but I'm hoping that maybe someday I'll be able to get back into it, and it'd be really cool to actually own a horse someday. I am an INFP. I don't really like the idea of trying to place people into a box and trying to, like, categorize everyone. So I don't like the idea of saying that there are only, like, 16 personalities in the world. I think that that's dumb. But when I took the Myers-Briggs test, I had to take it for school, I think, for like a school project or an assignment or something. When I took that and then I got the results of an INFP and I read the description, I was kind of blown away. For the most part, I felt like it described me to a T, and that was the first time that I'd really seen something like that, where a personality test was actually accurate. And so that was a pretty cool discovery, and I also got to learn more about the Enneagram, and I am a 4 on the Enneagram, which, again, it's weird to me to, like, place people into these categories, but I think to some extent it's a helpful tool for understanding people better. In middle school, I played the electric guitar in a jazz band, and I hated it. My teacher was really nice and he was really patient with us, but the problem is that I cannot read sheet music, so I had no clue what I was playing ever, and I just kind of had to guess. If you're wondering how I even got into that band in the first place, I did audition and I had to read a piece of sheet music, and obviously I couldn't, and I was just stumped. But I was playing something on the guitar, and somehow my teacher said that he saw potential in me, and so he wanted to take a chance and let me in the band, and that was a horrible decision on his part. I also ran track in middle school, and I really enjoyed track. I loved running, and I loved being competitive and getting to just race people for some reason. Once I reached 7th grade, I dropped out of middle school. Okay, that sounds like I'm just a middle school dropout. Like, that's the furthest I ever got. Let me rephrase. I left my public middle school and I had to start doing online school. So I finished out the rest of middle school and all of high school by doing it online. I was having a bunch of health issues at the time, and because of that, I was getting pulled out of school all the time to go home just because I felt sick all the time. And so when it got to the point where I was missing more days of school than I was actually attending, my parents and I decided that it would be for the best for me to start doing my schoolwork online, and that way I could do it at home even when I was sick and didn't feel good and that kind of thing. When I was in high school, I actually ended up joining the band at my church. It was a really good experience because it helped me kind of break out of my shell a bit, and it was also just really cool being surrounded by other musicians that were really talented and very, very welcoming, and they were really great at just including me. I love playing video games, and I always have. My current favorite video game that I own is Red Dead Redemption 2, and I think that's partially just because it takes me back to the days when I was riding horses all the time, and also because it just has a really interesting story, and I thought that it was really cool to get to see it all unfold. One of the best pieces of advice that I've received for creativity is to not overthink your art. And that's really hard for me to do, but when you overthink your art, you tend to try way too hard, and people can tell. It usually just ends up sort of sucking out all of the emotion behind it, and to me, that's the most important piece. I can play a total of 4 instruments. I can play the guitar, the ukulele, the piano, and the xylophone. And I learned how to play the xylophone in another band, just like in regular band in middle school. Because there was like the regular band that would play at school assemblies, and then there was the jazz band that like actually performed places. So I learned how to play the xylophone, and the reason it was so easy for me to pick up is just because it's the same layout as the piano. My eyes are amber, and I learned recently that apparently that's one of the rarest, or the rarest eye color, which I thought was kind of cool. And I don't know if this is true, but I read that apparently 0.01% of the population has amber eyes. And when I learned that fact, that made me feel kind of special, I guess, which is weird because it's such a small feature and such a small detail that like people probably don't think about at all. But when I learned that, I just kind of felt happy to have amber eyes, and I felt like special because of it. Whenever I get really stressed out, I tend to tighten up, which I think is normal, but I especially tighten up my abdominal muscles, and when I do that, it does something to my diaphragm, and it makes it really difficult to sing. And so I have to actually go into a chiropractor, and he has to, like, essentially pull my stomach down or something, because, like, I get so tense and so tight that I physically can't sing when my muscles are like that. So I know that the covers have been kind of few and far between on this channel, but part of that is just because my muscles have been so tight that I just haven't been able to sing easily. I can still sing, but it's very croaky at the moment, just because of how messed up everything is in my abdomen right now. So I apologize for that. So those are a few facts about me, or more than a few. I think there were like probably over 50 facts at this point, and I was gonna do a video where I shared 100 facts about me, but I honestly just sat down making a list and I could not come up with 100 things. So maybe if you guys want, I'll do like a second part to this video down the road where I give like 50 more facts. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know what kind of video you want to see next week. If you want to see a cover, or if you want to see an improvised instrumental, as I like to call it, or another video like this where I just kind of sit down and chat and hang out. I always really like filming these videos just because they're really relaxing. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know what you'd like to see next week, and I will see you guys in another video soon. Bye!